Recently, I fell victim to a PayPal chargeback scammer who stole about $1,500 from me. For those who are unaware, these kinds of scammers prey on artists and streamers who accept tips through platforms that support PayPal. And what they do is they quote-unquote donate large amounts of money and then issue a chargeback request to harm or possibly even make a profit from the person they quote-unquote wanted to support. This is a long-running issue in the streaming community and ultimately stems from a general lack of protection for individual entertainers like myself. While PayPal has seller protection, it means jack all if the scammer decides to go back to their bank and ask for a chargeback anyways, usually under the guise of, I did not make this purchase, or I never received this product. This is because we live in a culture where the customer is always right, even if the customer is actively scamming other people. To make it abundantly clear, this is a form of theft, both in the sense that you're taking money from the streamer who has likely already deposited the money, but also wasting their precious time. And I know you're probably saying, well, you shouldn't deposit the money directly after you get it, and there's two reasons why people might do this. For one, leaving large amounts of money in PayPal risks the chance of you losing that money to begin with, especially if PayPal pulls the rug out from under you. The second thing is, I didn't take it right away. I waited, and I got the initial chargeback request, and PayPal initially ruled in my favor. You'd think that once the case was closed in their case, that would be the end of it, but no, the person is back, and just because they got caught, they decided to file with their bank anyways. Unfortunately, the bank doesn't understand the difference with this situation, so they believe that I'm the one at fault here. Since tips don't constitute as a physical product, companies don't have any form of tracking the legitimacy of it. Banks don't really understand the concept of digital tips or giving money to creators willingly, which lets scumbags like this get away with this kind of crap. The phrase, time is money, is more poignant than ever when you work as a freelancer. The hours I spent dealing with this scammer is time that I could have spent working on commissions, or working on another video, or hell, making a more positively oriented stream. On top of that, stress is a major contributor to autoimmune disease flares, which is the main reason why I'm doing freelance instead of having a normal job. Putting aside the general inferno that it is the American job market, modern jobs aren't conducive to those who have multiple disabilities like arthritis or chronic fatigue. So when you have medical problems like me that are exacerbated by stress, and you're put into a tough spot financially, you end up losing more time and sanity that could be used to be making sure you're earning your keep and taking care of yourself. I could talk about how I feel that PayPal should be more carefully regulated or have more extensive seller protection. I could comment on how banks should have a form of seller insurance or screening processes when it comes to this. However, these are ultimately institutions built around business, and at the end of the day, the consumer is the ultimate means of them earning their money. A bank does not care if a person is using their platform to commit theft or fraud unless there is tangible evidence, and most of the time it's on such a small amount that they either can't be charged for it, or more likely the person responsible lives in a different country and can't be charged under the same jurisdiction if it were to happen, well, say in your own country. The point I'm generally trying to make here is that the odds are severely stacked against artists and freelancers from the start, and we lack a lot of protections. And if you're like me, you're likely not in the financial position to be taking hits like this. This video has two purposes: explaining why I'm quitting streaming on YouTube for the foreseeable future, and talking about how you can protect yourself from people like this. As of writing and recording this script, I'm actually meant to have been on vacation, resting from a significant amount of burnout. I've been dealing with this chargeback scammer for over a month, and due to the nature of the beast, banks are allowed to take their sweet old time, up to 2.5 months. As such, I'm refraining from giving the information of the scammer, at least until the case is resolved. The odds of them seeing this video is highly unlikely anyways, so if anything, consider this a means of reminding the general public about safety online. To say I'm tired would be the understatement of the century. I find myself lucky to be one of the few people making relatively consistent income as an artist through streaming and commissions. That kind of growth and opportunity is a privilege, and is something I find myself very lucky to be able to do. However, the general safety and moderation systems on YouTube streams is lackluster at best and dangerously ignorant at worst. For one, instead of proper banning and reporting procedures like Twitch, YouTube only allows you to hide people from being seen on your channel instead of actually removing them from being able to see you. This increases the risk of stalking, especially from hate groups who actively seek out creators from specific niches or minorities in order to harass them. Early this year, I dealt with the displeasure of a hate group entering my chat and Discord server via YouTube to post things like gore, racist slurs, and content that would get a TV host kicked off of Fox News. This isn't exclusive to YouTube, as this sort of thing can happen on Twitch as well, but the odds are much less likely due to the discoverability and user base of Twitch. On top of that, I've discovered an increasing amount of people who are very obviously children managing to come across my content on the YouTube Shorts feed, either through their own accounts or through their parents. Now, I'm of the mind that the moderation of what children should watch and the onus of what they discover is ultimately on the parents' shoulders. However, in comparison to Twitch, YouTube does not have a means of warning people about potential content filters when it comes to live broadcasts. Twitch allows me to label my streams for mature audiences without throwing them into a weird algorithm hole like YouTube that essentially kills any visibility. People are warned ahead of time of what they're getting into, what they should expect, and the choice to proceed is ultimately on them. To make something abundantly clear, I am firmly against implementations of age verification, since policies like that are not intended to actually moderate who gets access to what content, but rather sell information and make a profit off of information that should remain private. However, due to the increased age cap of Twitch being 17 plus on the App Store, the odds of someone younger showing up on my stream is far less compared to YouTube's 13 plus. The odds of a child picking up their parent's phone and going directly to Twitch is far lower than YouTube as an example. And due to infinite scrolling being the new form of receiving content, the odds of a child coming across my content is much higher versus the older discoverability system of either searching specific keywords or searching for a specific creator. For the sake of clarity, my channel is not child-friendly and should not be mistaken as such. While yes, I use an animated VTuber model that has a cutesy style, my content is not and will never be marketed towards children and should not be watched by people under the age of 18. Ignoring the amount of times I swear and make adult jokes, I'm not interested in appealing or selling to kids, and I'm not interested in being an unpaid babysitter for them. Consider me old school, but back in the day when we were kids, we didn't sit down and scroll YouTube for hours on end. We went out and walked around the neighborhood, mucked about in the creek in the woods, and on days where the weather didn't allow for outdoor activity, we played video games or watched TV specifically curated for our age demographic. I do not feel that YouTube should be significantly changed or made to accommodate unaccompanied minors. As someone who's exposed to higher rated content on YouTube as a child, the responsibility of exposure and safety should ultimately fall upon the parents to provide children safer formats of entertainment rather than letting them loose on the nearest YouTuber. I know a major contributing factor of it is also the general economic status of the world. Not everyone can afford a $500 console for children or to buy a bunch of toys, and not everyone is available to watch their children in every waking moment. Ignoring the unfair penalization of content creators in the grand scheme of things, the lack of safe environments for kids to just be themselves, like Webkinz and Club Penguin, have gone to the wayside since the early 2000s. There's not a lot of money to be made in them, unfortunately, which just exacerbates the problem. I've met some pretty cool people who tune into my streams on YouTube, but I'm also a businessman who has to pick how he spends his time and money. In business, an important principle is cost versus reward. You have to weigh if the reward of doing something is worth the cost of doing it. If you end up taking a loss, aka learning less than you spent, then that's bad and can damage your well-being in the long term. While streaming on YouTube has provided me growth in terms of subscriber count and viewership, it's come at the cost of my time and general sanity. Not only do I have to spend extra time setting up for streams, but the stress and worry about something going wrong ends up impacting the health of my streams and the general entertainment factor. Since the people in the YouTube chat can't behave, it leads to higher stress for myself and my mods. And since there's no way to properly penalize or protect myself from these people, the risks are much higher than the reward. This isn't necessarily to dissuade you from streaming on YouTube. If your audience is good or you're at a monetizable state, you're most likely able to protect yourself better due to the fact that you're more able to effectively moderate and cultivate who is watching your streams and when. Even if it's just putting your streams behind a paywall through channel membership, this cuts a significant portion of the wheat from the chaff because scammers and raiders are less likely to be incentivized to try to get something out of you when they have to take a net loss in order to achieve it. Children do not have the means of supporting you financially on their own, so unless you're a big streamer who's earning a lot in ad revenue, kids in your chat can actively isolate adult viewers or even result in them being contacted by dangerous people or bad actors who don't have their best interests at heart. So without any financial incentive and an increased cost of both my physical health and time, continuing to stream on YouTube is a net loss. While it gains me subscribers, it also reduces the amount of subscribers who are likely to watch my other content like long-form videos or shorts. With this being my second channel, curating consistent content that will keep people coming back is essential. When I have to put a subscribers-only setting on my chat just to reduce the chance of malicious people harassing myself or my viewers, it actively cheapens the value of each subscriber. They aren't necessarily subscribing because they want the content itself. They're trying to get into the door, and subscribing is ultimately a low cost to get to the interaction. For the sake of clarity, I don't think that every viewer on YouTube is malicious or actively out to get me. In fact, a majority of people out there are most likely chill and not only have the general sense of how to behave, but are simply watching on their platform of choice. It's simply due to the lack of guardrails in place by YouTube that more bugs get in through the cracks. Streaming on YouTube has been a feature for a long time, years in fact, and was most likely primarily implemented in reaction to the general financial success and interest in platforms such as Twitch. For those who are new to the internet or might not be as aware, a majority of features that platforms like YouTube or Blue Sky implement isn't necessarily because it's what users have asked for, but it's because it's what other platforms are doing. They notice financial success or something working on another platform and implement what's essentially a store brand version of that feature without recognizing what made it work in the first place. This is to encourage their current user base to stay on their platform longer, thus earning them more ad revenue and money as a whole. The reason why vertical streams on YouTube work best in terms of growth is because, unlike regular live streams that have to be actively sought out on a different tab, vertical streams on YouTube are placed directly on the Shorts feed, increasing discoverability. The incentive for this is, well, obvious. People are more likely to give content creators money for instantaneous recognition or as a means of getting access to the content, and YouTube takes part of that wage. Of course YouTube is going to continue pushing streams to the short feed. It's earning them money, and that's the ultimate goal of a business. It's what got TikTok streaming so big, and thanks to TikTok, the entertainment and content industry has been changed significantly since the global pandemic. I'm going to move on from the financial discussion for a bit to give you a bit of a breather and give a few reassurances. While I've been stressed out by YouTube and their shenanigans, I'm not going to be quitting streaming. I'm simply going to be focusing on Twitch as my primary platform until YouTube is in a better state with better moderation tools, or my channel has the means of reducing the incentive for bad actors. You might be wondering why anyone would stream on YouTube if Twitch is right there, and the primary reason for it is cross-promotion. Growth on Twitch is much slower compared to YouTube due to the general lack of promotion. In order to grow as a streamer on Twitch, you have to post content related to your streams on other platforms in order to grab eyes. Most people don't live on Twitch or go scrolling there, and only go there for a bit of entertainment from streamers they know. Having all of your eggs in one basket in terms of Twitch can also be a bit more harmful than good. It's generally good to have a backup in case of a platform going belly up. The enshittification of platforms is a constant stressor for content creators. Since platforms don't understand what their user base actually wants or tend to implement based off of other platform success, there will often be policies or changes made that actively damage the people who are upholding the platform. It's kind of like having a big rock and slowly digging out the bottom of the rock to get more rock. Eventually, the weight of the poor decisions will end up falling on you, and unfortunately the people underneath the stone who are supporting it end up getting squished. This lack of consistency and stress isn't solely found in streaming and content creation. In fact, it can be found in the standard job market. The only difference between a content creator and someone working a salaried job is that content creators aren't promised a specific salary, nor do we get health benefits. If YouTube or Twitch ends up taking away your monetization status, you don't get a form of compensation for suddenly losing your primary income, or quote-unquote being fired. It's why a lot of creators rely on either sponsorships or viewer generosity through platforms like Patreon or on-stream tips. That is where we come down to our final point, which is protecting yourself. Due to the relative monopoly it has on the market, PayPal has gone relatively unchallenged in both terms of policy and the fact that they are focused primarily on the consumer and protecting themselves as a business. Its primary benefits as a platform are being available in almost all countries, which comes as a double-edged sword when you deal with international scammers. This relative universal availability has led a lot of artists and creators to rely on PayPal, as it is secure and does come with some protections when you use it for business purposes. That being said, PayPal has quietly undermined a lot of help and protection for the consumers, specifically business accounts. For starters, they no longer have an email or ticket filing system for technical support, instead relying on an AI chatbot that is unhelpful at best and may actively worsen the situation at worst. A big reason for this shift is due to the fact that having an AI bears much more financial incentive for them. Not only do they not have to hire contractors to work as customer support beyond specific available hours, but they don't have to worry about dealing with people face to face. This automation might appear convenient at a distance, but the lack of human interaction or ability to contact someone directly results in scam situations putting more power in the hands of the scammer due to the lack of communication. When the only communication a person has is reading an explanation with a limited character count and not being able to discuss things more extensively with the business owner, decisions made by an employee may be skewed in the favor of the buyer, who doesn't have to provide evidence to defend their call for the chargeback, outside of pushing a button. It's the principle of, just trust me, bro, where in contrast the business owner has to fight to explain why they aren't the one at fault. Unfortunately, in this day and age, payment processors are very specific in what they will and won't allow. While they provide convenience, they also take a bit of every dollar you make, which means the earnings you make are ultimately smaller. If you're intent on making a living as a streamer or an artist, the first step I would take is to reduce your reliance on PayPal in terms of receiving money. Find ways to get direct deposits to your banking account where possible when it comes to secure platforms like Twitch and Stream Elements. Use Stream Elements Pay instead of using the PayPal integration, since Stream Elements has chargeback protection that's stronger compared to PayPal. Have an alternative platform that you can use to receive payments like Stripe or Square. There are lots of stories about artists having the rug pulled out from under them by PayPal because they labeled an invoice wrong, or a scammer filed against them and they lost their means of income. Diversify your means of income. If your generosity is your primary source of support, offer them a means of reward through Streamloots cards or merchandise. The net earnings will be smaller, however you will have proper seller protection as there is evidence of them attempting to receive something. Scammers are far less incentivized to try and get something out of you if they have to go through verified sources with tracking and legal recognition. When scammers on PayPal do a chargeback scam, it's essentially the equivalent of tossing a $100 bill into a busker's guitar case on a stage, then quote-unquote changing their mind halfway through the song, and grabbing one of your $20 bills as compensation while going back for the pot. It is effectively theft, but given the loose protections of platforms and the slowness and lack of understanding by legislation, artists are ultimately the one who pay the price for people's poor behavior. Waiting around for PayPal and similar platforms to improve for you is ultimately putting yourself at more risk. Diversify your income, reduce your reliance on payment processors, and protect yourself from bad actors. It's the equivalent of staring at a mountain and waiting for it to move so you can build a road. You can either build around the mountain or dig a tunnel through it, but ultimately, in the end of the day, your ability to protect yourself and earn a living are going to come down to being able to proactively do stuff for yourself. Corporations don't ultimately have your best interests at heart, so know how to protect yourself and recognize the signs of a scam. I'm aware that this is a far step from my usual content and isn't everyone's cup of tea. If you somehow made it this far, I hope you like it, and I apologize for all the financial discussion. Running a business and personal growth in terms of content creation is one of my biggest interests, and is one of the main reasons I'm still making content, despite the fact that it's a very difficult experience. If you'd like to support me financially and actually get something in return for it, you can join my Patreon or buy something from my online shop. And heck, if this video does well and you guys like these deeper talk videos, let me know in the comments. I might actually see about making them a regular thing. I am aware of how cynical my approach to the YouTube streaming side of things is, and that's mostly due to the fact that I've been making content on YouTube for over 13 years. I've seen the nastier sides of the internet, and the big reason why I've been handling this how I am is because I have experience and have been around the internet long enough to see how it's changed. If you're actually worried that you might have upset me or be one of the people I'm calling out in this video, the odds are you're actually part of the good majority of people who tune into my content. Despite the fact that I've been dealing with these issues in a larger quantity recently, these kinds of people are ultimately just a loud minority and happen to become more prevalent because, well, we as humans are biologically wired to see more negatives than the positives. If I thought that everyone on the internet was a horrible person and I didn't want to stream anymore, I'd just quit making content or do the art commissions without the streams. I have a strong passion for streaming and entertainment. It's something I want to pursue as a long-term career and hopefully make enough money to hire other people. Despite the amount of stress that comes with making content, I am here for the long run. I've often made a joke that being an animator requires being a very special type of person, in the sense that you have to have a passion for it in the face of frequent adversity and frustration. I feel like this applies tenfold for being a content creator due to the fact that, compared to contracted animators, we make much less financially. It requires having a certain kind of skin and toughness that takes time and practice to develop, and while I have been stressed out with this situation, I also recognize that I'm better off doing something about it than just letting myself fall into the freeze. I'm aware that me basically saying, screw streaming on YouTube, might be pretty saddening for people who subscribed here for the streams. To these people, I would highly encourage following me or joining me on Twitch. The streams aren't going away, I'm just not going to put them on a platform that isn't currently optimized to protect and provide for this form of content. The chances of me returning to streaming on YouTube are pretty low. Not a 0 chance, but maybe a 1 or 2%. But I'm likely going to be keeping an eye out on what YouTube ends up doing in the future in order to improve their streaming methods before I consider coming back. That's assuming they even bother with changing anything at all. I mean, look how it's changed over the years. Very little. YouTube has always been a bit of a wild west, and people are much more likely to be aggressive due to the anonymous nature of the platform. If anyone from YouTube is watching this or has a connection to YouTube, I would highly recommend looking into the safety features shown by Twitch, specifically the proper banning and timeout features to reduce stalking. It's an unfortunate but necessary step because, in the grand scheme of things, this is ultimately a sacrifice that's going to hurt me the most. I'm still going to post shorts that were edited by Moose and make long-form content, but at the end of the day, success as a content creator is a marathon and not a sprint. If you burn out early on, you run more of a risk of losing out on valuable time and income that would have been earned if you took a risk and make a change. To any content creators out there who are feeling burnout or dread surrounding your content, I would highly recommend sitting down with yourself and analyzing where things could be improved or changed. Your mental health and well-being is worth much more than pushing yourself for people who don't respect you. Hell, the weight I felt fall off my shoulders when I removed YouTube multi-stream was very strong and an instant sign that it was the right decision. Weigh the value of your struggles, look at the way that people treat you with a critical eye, and screen cap everything. Protect yourself out there, because we all know that there are people out there who don't have the best intentions for us. Thanks for watching.